Right, so this is going to be the first of my videos, my information videos, and this one is on myostatin inhibitors. So the first thing we need to do is establish what myostatin is. Myostatin regulates muscle growth. Now, it is a weird one. It's known as a GDF8, a growth differential factor 8, and it works in the form of a protein released by myocytes. Now, this protein has two effects on the body. It stops cellular muscular growth, and it restricts protein synthesis through a certain axis. We are all suppressed, however, not as much as you might think. Now, if someone naturally suffers from myostatin deficiency or myostatin hypertrophy, then they're going to carry more muscle mass, they're going to have more strength, and they're going to be leaner. So it does play a role, and variance of how much you have in your system will vary from person to person. So, someone with what we typically say has good genetics for bodybuilding, chances are they have low myostatin. It's definitely a massive contributing factor. Now there are those that reportedly have very low myostatin, like little Hercules, and there's been a few others throughout the history of our lifting that may have potentially had this condition. Now, most people are familiar with the animal that's famous for having it, and that's the Belgian blue bull. Now, the Belgian blue bull has been selectively bred to reduce its myostatin levels to such a point that these things are heavily muscled, massively muscled, freakishly. And there's been pictures floating around the internet about mice that are very heavily muscled and greyhounds that are very heavily muscled. But there is one thing you need to bear in mind. Myostatin suppression, as in the amount of muscle growth that myostatin in animal suppresses, is far greater than that in a human being. So where the muscle mass in a mouse might grow 50% greater, the muscle mass in a human being with their myostatin suppressed is only going to be between 10 and 15%. Now, in a 240-pound bodybuilder, around 120 to 130 pounds of his body mass will be muscle tissue. The range is between 35 and 54% for muscle tissue in relation to body weight. Obviously, bodybuilders are going to be the top end, so we're looking at the 50s, possibly we'll push 60%. So, for our 240-pound bodybuilder, if he has 130 pounds of muscle mass, then effectively he has the potential of gaining somewhere between 13 and 19 more pounds. Now 13, just by pure myostatin suppression, now 13 to 19 more pounds on stage weight is going to make a dramatic effect to his physique. Now you take someone like Ronnie, who probably had 180 pounds, 160 pounds of muscle mass. I mean, obviously the percentage is going to get greater when you are in contest shape. I think he was in his 330s, off season maybe slightly more. So he's looking at 160 to 170 pounds of muscle. 15% on that, and you're looking at about 25 pounds of muscle mass. So you imagine Ronnie Coleman on stage at 325 pounds, because I think about 297 was the heaviest he could be. That's going to be a big difference. So as you can see, it does have its place, but it's not going to create the freakishly cartoon type physiques that people seem to think it will. And the animal studies don't bear much relation to its effect on a human being, apart from the fact that it's showing increased muscle mass. It's not going to be as dramatic as that. Now, we are well aware, or most people are well aware, of the peptides that claim to suppress myostatin. Now, you've got to bear in mind as well something on this, that myostatin is responsible for all sorts of growth regulation, internal organs, even has effects on the immune system. Now, early clinical trials with pharmaceutical myostatin suppressions come up with all sorts of problems, particularly with the immune system. Now, the peptide versions are shit. They do not do anything, and they definitely do not suppress your myostatin. And in a minute, well, I am now going to tell you why. You've got to look at how this drug is being created. Now, I'm led to believe that later on this year, early 2017, we will see a pharmaceutical version of this. And that's going to be big, big things. Of all the drugs that are under development, myostatin suppressors are believed to have the most financial gain from the marketplace. This stuff's going to be big, big money. And it's obviously going to command a very high premium. Now, going back to the peptides. So why don't these peptides work? Well, you've got to understand of how this stuff is created. Now, it's a biodrug. It's live. It's a living drug. And what happens is mice are used to create antibodies. These antibodies, along with the spleen, are then harvested. Now, there are millions of these things, and these have to be searched through, and the correct ones have to be pulled out. And this is where the issues have been, in that if you get the wrong ones, you'll have a different effect within the body. And once they've got the right ones, they then clone them. And they keep cloning them until they get to a point where they've got enough to create a quantity of the drug. So how is your peptide manufacturer going to cope with that? He can't just take the chemical equation and repeat it, because he needs the original antibodies. And the only way he's going to get the original antibodies is by having his own donor mice. So every company that creates this stuff will make their own unique version, because it's made from living things. It isn't a clone copy in the sense of it's a chemical formula that I can get the ingredients put together and make the same thing. It doesn't work like that. It's living. It's developed from live animals, mice. So in that essence, it can't be copied. So the peptide versions, complete bunk. They do not suppress your myostatin. Now, as I said, I'm led to believe through a few people who work in the research industry that we are likely to see very shortly a pharmaceutical version of this in the market. And I have no doubt that this will find its way into somebody's house, either through a friendly doctor or wherever it may be, because the stuff always does. But it's going to command a premium. It's going to be very, very expensive stuff. Now, there's rumours that Big Ramy and Marcus Rule have dabbled with myostatin suppression, and it may well be true, because this drug has been developed for quite some time. And I have no doubt that there are laboratories out there that if you've got enough money, will give you access, or individuals will give you access to the development drug. And at the end of the day, if you are an individual striving for muscle loss, you are more likely to put up with some of the sides that this stuff has created than would be viable or allowed in a drug that was going into mass production for the market. So I have no doubt that there are early versions out there that have been used by individuals and have, I would suspect, quite good results. But the real product will be coming soon. Just whether you've got the budget or the resources, or to answer the need, you take it. Good like I said. Though 10 to 15% of muscle mass increase is going to make a difference, it isn't going to take a skinny Joe Blogs to a super freak. That just isn't going to happen. So is it the holy grail of bodybuilding drugs? Well, I think in essence, in the fact that you don't need to train for this drug to work, that it definitely could be classed as that, yes. But at the same time, we are not going to see a massive, incredible leap forward in muscular development, but we should see some changes. Saying that, That would depend on how many pros have already had access to this stuff. Because like I said, it definitely is available with certain channels. The prototype versions are definitely being used. I am convinced of that. By who? I'm not sure. But I am convinced that they've been out there that long and development for that long that somebody somewhere would have got their hands on something. So there you go. That's myostatin suppression. And it'll be down to how big your pockets are, I think, to be honest, for anyone that fancies using it in the future. Right, on that note, I'm going to bugger off, and I'll try and think of something to chat to you guys about in a week or so. Take care, man.